Hi, it's Tracy Farquhar back again with the tarot reading for the week ahead. Today is March 10th, and this is what I got for today. As usual, I've pulled 4 cards. The first 3 represent past, present, and future. And the last card is what I call an action card that sums up the whole reading. In today's case, all 3 of the first 3 cards, the past, present, and future cards, are reversed, upside down. The way I read a reversed card is that it's more about what is going on internally with us than necessarily what's going on externally. There are a lot of different ways to read cards. There's a lot of different ways to read a reverse card, but that way uh, works for me. So keep that in mind as we talk about these first 3 cards. The first card in the past is the 10 of Wands. It looks like that in my deck, which is the Barbara Walker deck. As I said, it is a reverse card. It's upside down. The word on that card in my deck is oppression, and it's coming up in the past. So there is a sense in this card of not being in control, having this feeling that you're being manipulated or controlled by some external force. The sense of oppression means that we are feeling like we're not able to express ourselves properly. So it's important for you to kind of look at this in a personal way in your own life. If there's anything going on in your life where you're feeling held back by somebody else, you're being influenced negatively by somebody else, where you feel like you have to hide some part of yourself, or you're not able to express yourself fully because of a fear of being judged or criticized. This card is bringing that to light. Sometimes we don't recognize why we are holding back on ourselves. And this card can be a reminder that we are very heavily influenced by the external world and by the people in our lives and by people in authority, whether we know it or not. It's just human nature. So I think this card is asking you to look at that in your own life and also as a collective, uh, in your own community, in our country, in the world. And that sense of not being in control is not necessarily true. It's true that we can be held back. It's true that we are influenced, but we can make different decisions about that. The card being reversed is saying we're believing something about this that may or may not be entirely true. So if we think about why we are afraid to express ourselves openly, and sometimes it's true that we want to use caution with that. There's nothing wrong with caution, but the word oppression means being held in such a way that we can't be ourselves. And that can happen sometimes with those of us who are people pleasers. And I can relate to that a lot in my life. I've gotten better, but I think many sensitive people will find themselves wanting to make everybody happy all the time, or not wanting to upset anyone, or not wanting to trigger somebody's anger. It is a natural part of being human. And again, it's much more prevalent in sensitive people. But we want to weigh the options here. Is it more important to avoid upsetting somebody or to not want to do anything that disturbs somebody's peace of mind? Is it worth having to constantly monitor who we are and how we're expressing ourselves in order to try to do that? Because the truth is that we can't make everybody happy all the time. We can't avoid upsetting people sometimes. There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like us or doesn't agree with us. And sometimes, especially in the world today, very vehemently. So I think it's important to look at that and say, this is who I am, and this is what I believe. And maybe it's more important for me to express that than it is for me to fear the outcome of that. Because our power is in the choices that we make. And the suit of wands in the tarot is about manifestation and creation and how we create our reality. And that doesn't mean that we control everything that happens to us. There's a whole lot of stuff out there that we can't control, including other people. But we always have the ability to make a choice about what to do with those situations and those people and how to respond to them. So it's something to keep in mind when you find yourself hesitating or holding something back. Consider why you're doing that and whether that reason is actually truth. Now, as this is coming up in the past, it could also indicate that this is something that's not new for you or for us as a collective. The second card in the present position is the Two of Swords, which looks like that in my deck. Again, a reversed card. Two always indicates some kind of partnership, some sense of balance. Swords is the suit of the thinking mind. And since this is a reversed card especially, I feel like it's more about the internal sense of balance that we can work on creating for ourselves. Since swords is the suit of the mind, the thinking mind, the logical mind, it's reminding us that as human beings, we are very highly influenced to be completely intellectual, logical, rely on what we know, what we think, what our mind is telling us. There's nothing really wrong with that, except that we usually forget, again, as the first card suggested, how heavily influenced that mind is by other people, our culture, how we were raised, the beliefs around us. And most of us are not taught to trust our intuitive feeling self. And in fact, we're usually taught not to trust that. So to me, this card is encouraging us to balance our sense of truth between what we know, what we think is the truth, what our intellect and logic is telling us with what we are feeling. And feeling doesn't necessarily mean emotions, although I wouldn't minimize emotions in our perspective of life. Sometimes we can get carried away by our emotions, and there is also that sense of not wanting to be guided purely from an emotional standpoint. But our emotions and our feelings are part of our way of perceiving the world, and they're very important. And to me, feelings are more about our intuitive senses, our higher senses, our gut feeling, what we sense in our heart, what we sense in energy. And that's very important. And we all have it, whether we choose to believe that or not, whether we choose to use it or not. It's a natural part of our human perception. So the balance, I think, that's being encouraged here is between the logical mind and the feeling self. How does this feel? Take time to kind of sit with something that may be disturbing your peace of mind and say, okay, my mind is telling me this thing about it. It's possible that that's not true. So let me see what I'm feeling. What am I sensing? And make sure that you're tuning in more often. It's hard to do that when you're running the hamster wheel all day and you're having to be up in your head all day with work or whatever you're doing. So it's important to have, even if it's just a few minutes in your day, to really tune in and say, what am I sensing? What am I feeling? Now, the third card in the future is the devil. There he is. And, nobody likes to see this card. There's a lot of fear around this figure. And I think that's the whole point of this card. Again, it is a reversed card. It is not literal. Nothing in the tarot is literal. They're all symbols. And I feel the devil represents habit and illusion mostly. And how our habits of thinking, which again relate to the first two cards, can really become exaggerated and become a source of fear. So we can create things in our minds that haven't happened, but may happen, and get carried away with that truth that our mind is believing Your mind starts to believe something, your body starts to believe it and starts to get into the fight or flight mode. And now we're all stressed out about something that hasn't even happened. Okay. So I think we all do it at some point or another. It is human nature. But it is important, again, to balance that fear-based, habitual worry and sense of doom with what you're actually feeling and sensing in this moment. So when you're getting carried off into some imaginary future, you're not present in the moment. Nobody can be present in the moment all the time. I refuse to believe that because we are humans. We need to learn from the past. We need to plan for the future as much as we can. But being present and really, again, connecting with the inner self, with the higher self, with the energy self, and the truth that comes through that energy is essential to our well-being, especially when we are highly stressed and we are in a situation that the first card is talking about, that sense that we are not in control of what's going on. When we start to get carried away with that feeling, we feel helpless, we feel powerless, we feel small. And it doesn't make us feel good about ourselves. So remember that this devil represents illusion, and not just what is being shown to us, but what we're making up in our minds, what we're taking in and believing is true. And it's really important to consider that there are a lot of falsehoods, both being shown to us and what's being exaggerated in our minds. That does not mean that we should ignore the things that are being shown to us. It just means we want to connect with ourselves and say, maybe there's more to this than what I am being shown. Maybe there is another reason, another circumstance that I'm not aware of yet. And consider that what you're being shown is never going to be 100% truth. That means in your own circle, in your own life, and in the bigger picture. People choose what to show us about themselves and about the world. And that's why it's even more important to trust your own sense of intuition about what the truth really is. Not an easy thing to do, but sometimes it's just enough to know that this is not the whole picture, so that we can start to imagine something better instead of something worse. The last card that sums everything up is the King of Swords. This is an upright card. And the king is always a very powerful figure in the tarot. Swords, again, is that suit of the mind, the thinking mind. There's a sense of rising above something here. So you can see that there's this kind of warrior figure who has slain the beast. So I think there's multiple meanings in what that beast can be. We all have our own beasts. Again, some of it is that sense of habit, that habitual way of responding, reacting to our lives, the things that we create in our mind, as represented by that devil card. Is also that sense of, putting all of our trust into the thinking mind that the second card represents. And as the first card says, that sense of being helpless and small, you're being manipulated. Okay, all of those things can create a lot of unease, a lot of turmoil within ourselves. And we need to honor that feeling. Okay, it's not saying, oh, just forget that and rise above it. I think it's reminding you of how strong you are. We all have a lot of inner strength. And that strength isn't just powering through and ignoring problems. It's saying, what can I do with this that's going to benefit me more? To me, that's the highest degree of strength. What's going to benefit me? What's going to benefit those around me? How can I use what's going on in a way that helps me to feel empowered? Can I catch myself when I go into that worrisome place of imagining terrible things happening and say, wait a minute, I'm creating a scenario that isn't really in front of me right now. There's a lot of bad things that are in front of us right now. And it's not minimizing that. But to me, it's saying you're a powerful being in the world. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise, especially not yourself. And understand that we all, as a collective, have a history of rising above the things that threaten to oppress us. And in our own personal lives, we have also demonstrated our ability to move through difficult times, to transform them into personal growth, and to triumph over the things that threaten to pull us down into that black hole. So don't forget how strong you are. Don't forget that you always have choices about how to respond. Also honor your feelings and emotions at this time, both in the wider picture and in your own personal life. Sometimes honoring that means downtime. Sometimes it means quiet time. And sometimes it means speaking out. You get to decide that. Don't let anybody tell you that you don't have the power to decide what to do with your own energy in your own life. I hope you find that helpful for the week ahead. Check out my website at tracyfarquhar.com. Please like and share this video if you got anything out of it, and I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.